If 2024 was the year of elections, 2025 is going to be the year of questions that are posed to these elected leaders, questions that these elected leaders will need to respond to. And what are those big questions? One of the big questions is peace and security. There's a clear failure visible to all of us, be it in the European continent, the whole continent, be it in the Middle East, in Africa, in other parts of the world. In 2023, we have witnessed more conflict than we have witnessed ever since 1945. And in some sense, peace and security is a question, and what should be the arrangements to manage it, to ensure it, to invest in it, is something we need to respond to. We are also seeing a very visible economic deglobalization, or some form of that, in our midst. We are seeing nationalist industrial policies, not by the developing world and the emerging markets that were prone to doing this, but we are seeing this by the big actors. The Inflation Reduction Act in the US privileges American companies, American manufacturing over others. The carbon border adjustment mechanism in Europe. And of course, shades of that all over the world. We are seeing that there is a fatigue with open markets and open borders, and all of us are looking at national instruments to benefit our own local industries and local economies. And in that sense, is globalization worth defending? What can be done to defend it is a big question before the leaders who are now going to be assuming office in 2025 or who have just recently assumed office in the past few months. Climate action. We have witnessed the hottest year in 2023, and we are just not seeing enough flow of money to the first responders. Who are the first responders? If 2/3 of global emissions are going to come from the developing and emerging world, it makes sense that 2/3 of climate finance must be deployed in that part of the globe. And if we are not seeing that, we are fooling ourselves in our battle against climate change. So that big question, can we put new energy and can we put cash on the front lines? Can money be focused on the front lines of climate action? I think how do we do that? How can we build arrangements for that is something that we need to respond to. Technology and AI. And, it was one of the biggest instruments of decentralizing capabilities, industry, entrepreneurship, businesses. We saw the production of unicorns in hundreds and thousands around the world, of course, largely concentrated in a few parts, but we saw the ability of the internet and the digital world to empower and enable small and medium businesses to flourish, either in the online spaces or offline. Now with AI and the large amounts of computing capabilities that you require, the big data sets that are necessary, are we going to see a shrinking of that space? Are the winners of the industrialization 3.0, the ones who have all the data sets, the ones who have capabilities and infrastructure and hardware, those who have data centers, are they going to dominate? Are we seeing a recession of decentralized growth? And of course, along with these questions around technology, climate, peace and security, and economic deglobalization, I think the whole notion of sovereignty, the importance of nation states, of political units, is up for grabs. Armies are invading borders. And that is a clear affront to the conception of the rules-based order that we have held so dear since 1945. But that is only one part of it. Digital intrusions, economic weaponization of economic instruments, of payment systems, of trading systems, of cultural systems, of sporting events. We are beginning to see countries weaponize all that was earlier used for people to connect, people to engage and interact. Countries need technology platforms for existential purposes. Countries need banks and economic systems and payment systems to serve populations. And if they are denied this, it could amount to an infringement of the right to self-govern and sovereignty. And in many ways, sovereignty is itself something that needs to be re-understood in our contemporary times, at a time when technology has evolved, when economic integration is so deep, when reliance on certain institutions that did not exist when it was discussed in 1945 has become crucial. And that is the fifth question that we believe is important for the leaders to answer. Now, decentralized innovation has been crucial for countries, economies, and communities to build businesses that have been relevant and that have responded to the locality, the needs of the locality, the context of the locality, the culture of the locality, and more importantly, the capabilities of the locality. Innovation was both shaping these as well as being shaped by these. And in some sense, the dynamic loop between innovation and entrepreneurship in different geographies build diverse business models, the M-Pesa in Kenya, the UPI system in India, and similar other innovations that help populations in different parts of the world. This was done at a time when internet connection was now cheap and available to everyone. The processing powers in a mobile handset allowed everyone to be in a computer lab all the time, and some software and access to certain digital features was easily available to all. And of course, that allowed the input cost for businesses to be low, and small and non-existing enterprises became global actors. And that was the decentralized innovation that we witnessed over the last 20-25 years. Now, if the input for future businesses is going to be based on access to big data sets, data that has been collected and now has become intellectual property of big platforms already, it's going to be problematic. If compute power that AI demands is going to be so huge that mobile phones are no longer relevant in those business models, and everyone has to invest in data labs with multiple central processing units and hardware, is going to be problematic again. And finally, if all of it is going to be primarily being designed to serve the first 1 billion of this planet, the rich 1 billion, then are those going to serve the purposes of the 7 billion who are not yet in the economic mainstream? And I think the purpose and ethic of and capabilities of AI for the future may not include the needs and aspirations of the next 7. And in that sense, decentralized innovation in the age of AI will require a policy impetus, policy innovation that will make some of these ingredients, computing powers, big data sets, public infrastructure available to all. And I think that is something that we've seen happen before. For example, the payment systems in India prevented the monopolization of individuals by any platforms. So, and any app producer, anyone who produced a smart app could have the privilege of having access to the same information space that was available to any big app producer. So how do we, in many ways, unclutter the concentration by design in the AI age is something that we need to respond to. What can government do? I think the big question is, does government have a role in regulating, managing, governing the AI space? The answer is yes. And that is a space where they will have to set the principles. If they believe they can legislate innovation, we know it's not going to happen. You cannot legislate innovation. You can't do it through executive order. You have to regulate, or rather you have to come up with, through a multi-stakeholder consensus process, a set of principles that must become the basis of design of all enterprises. And I think the role of the government would be to be the custodian of the principles, rather than be the enforcers of law and regulation in an age where the digital does not recognize constitutions and borders, and where jurisdiction, if sought to be exerted, is going to ensure that those enterprises and platforms and innovators stay away from your geography. And in that sense, the government has the enviable task of being custodian of principles that benefit the people, and doing it in a manner that attracts investments and investors to those geographies. So they are both the ambassadors of their country seeking investments, and protectors of their people who should not be harmed from the collateral that some of these technologies can certainly exude. What is the role of existing institutions in this contemporary world, the world of AI, the world of climate action and climate change, the world where national policies are becoming popular? the world where technology is challenging passports and borders and jurisdictions. International institutions have a bigger role. Are they capable of delivering on that role is the question of our times. And how do we make them more responsive and more adept at being able to serve the purpose of in the 21st century, something that they did fairly well for some part of the 20th century, is again something that we need to work towards. As far as I'm concerned, I think if we were to redesign the international order and the multilateral institutions today, we may not come up with a very different structure to the one that we have. What we have is robust. The problem is who sits there, why are they sitting there, and what is the purpose of the role that they play. And I think those need to be redefined. Who sits on the high table and how is the seats on the high table allocated? What is the purpose of those who sit on the high table? And in some sense, who are they accountable to and who are they responsive to? Becomes the question of our time. I think the institutions are important, even more important. I think the ethics and the governance structures of those institutions need dramatic reform. And it has to begin with the Security Council. It is the most visible and perverse international body that exists today. Once we are honest about rethinking these international institutions, once we are honest about thinking about the role of government and how they respond to these contemporary times, we realize that there is actually only one question that we are responding to. It is not a question on energy and climate. It is not a question about technology and its future. It's not a question about sovereignty and its mediation. It's not a question about economic policies and trade and globalization. Actually, it is a single question on what is the governance for the 21st century. In the digital age, in an age of participation of billions of people in every conversation, courtesy the social media platforms that allow everyone to have a say, governance needs to be redefined. And in some sense, these are issues that implicate and are affected by each other. And these are just five. By the way, we could have five more. We could have health, and we could have nature and ecosystems, the bioecosystems. They are all interconnected issues. It is the governance that needs focus, and the governance that we have today was designed in 1945, and it certainly looks its age. There was this very famous thinker and data scientist, Hans Rosling, if I remember the name correctly. He defined himself as a possibilist, and I think I would like to be a possibilist. I see possibilities. I see possibilities for 7 billion, 6 billion humans to change their lives dramatically in the next 4 to 5 years. Driven by technology, driven by green energy, driven by climate investments that will lift local populations. And that's a great possibility. You have seen what investments and innovation can do. We have living examples. You've seen what has happened in China. You've seen what is happening in India. You've seen what is happening. You've seen what has happened in certain countries in Africa as well as in Asia, right? So there is huge possibility to change lives forever. Will it happen? Is the big question. The risk is, can we find it within ourselves? Can we find leadership? Can we find politics that will allow money to cross borders, innovation to reach people, and opportunities to be grabbed by all? And I think that's the big question for the year ahead.